Hello everyone, my name is Patrick Hayes, and in this video we will be working on the Campagnoli Caprice number 3 together. And this Caprice was selected as one of this year's Viola All-State Etudes. I hope that in this video I can provide some helpful structure for your practice, as well as some insight into the piece that will make it just a little bit clearer. There's a lot of ink on the page for this etude, or for this Caprice, and hopefully by the end of the video, you'll find it just a little bit more approachable. All right, so let's get started. In the beginning, we have a 4-bar phrase, okay? And all that Campagnoli is doing in this first 4 bars is spelling out for our listener the key of A major. And he does this by having us hold these dotted quarter notes on the main notes of A major. Okay, so let's break it apart. If we take the first note of measure 1, the third beat of measure 1, the first beat of measure 2, the third beat of measure 2, first beat of measure 3, third beat of measure 3, and first beat of measure 4, all we have is a simple A major chord, okay? Something that's extremely positive, it should be happy, it should be played with lots and lots of joy, okay? Once we know that, it becomes a little bit simpler, all right? Like I said in the beginning, what I hope to provide for you guys that are working on this etude is just a little bit of structure as you approach this piece, okay? It's actually written very, very clearly with really simple elements, okay? So all we're doing is spelling a triad, which is just a chord in music theory. A major. Okay? Now, what I recommend is practicing these main notes of an A major chord with a drone. So all you have to do is go on YouTube and type in A major drone or A major chord drone, and there'll be lots of videos that pop up. Okay, I will also link a video in the notes as well, so that you can have something just readily available. And what that does is it forces your ear to really listen to the intonation of these main notes, okay? So you'll have that drone going, and then you can really experiment with just sitting on each of these notes. Then, once you feel that you are comfortable with where these notes are and where they sit on your viola, then you can add a rhythm, all right? Our time signature for this piece is 12/8. So we are subdividing each of our big beats into littler beats of eighth notes, okay? So right now, of course, we are going very slow, so put a metronome on that is at a tempo that feels comfortable for you. Nothing wrong with going slow in your practice, okay? So put it on eighth note clicks and just play through each of these notes of the triad. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're done, okay? So, A major is the name of the game for these first 4 measures. And if you practice in this way, then it will be really established in your ear, and you can then feel a little bit more confident that there is, in fact, a structure to how he is building these measures. The next step is to connect these pillars of A major that we have now built, okay? What I would recommend is to take out the slurs, make it simpler for your bow and your left hand to work together. Take out the slurs and just find where each of those notes sit. And I would still put it on a metronome click that is comfortable for you. Okay, now once you've done that and that feels comfortable, then maybe you can start to add in more slurs. Let's try groups of 2. Once you feel like you can play groups of 2 extremely clearly with the metronome with beautiful, gorgeous sound, then maybe you try groups of 3. I actually think slurring groups of 3 is a little trickier. And so on. Final boss level is to slur it as written in groups of 6. And then so on, okay? As you are practicing, and I'm even finding myself getting lazy with it, make sure that you don't lose the energy in your playing. Each of these dotted quarter notes are marked with an accent, which means they should be played with some joy and some positivity that A major carries with it, okay? And as you do your repetitions in your practice, if you start getting a little bit smoother with those accents, then it's just going to be built into your playing, okay? Work hard against that instinct to really stick with the character of those accents. Ba. 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 Okay, pay attention to your bow speed, pay attention to the bow weight that you are applying at the beginning of those notes, and really hold on to the intensity of those accents. Once you are done with all of the kind of connecting parts to our pillars, we have now reached measure 4, and you can go through the same steps that we just did. I would recommend taking out all the slurs, going with the metronome at a click that feels comfortable to you, and then just take your time finding where those notes lie. We are now in 4th position. Okay, and once you feel comfortable with separate notes, you can slur by groups of 2. With clear sound and full energy, once you feel comfortable slurring groups of 2, you can go groups of 3, and so on, okay? What I want to point out, though, is that even though each of these 4 beats on the page looks like there's a lot of ink, we have 4 beats of 16th notes here. They follow a very, very simple shape, and the shape repeats itself. We have notes that descend, and then we have just a little kind of cutesy rise back up. And then we have that same shape. And yet again, we have that same shape. And then we have a little scale downwards that takes us to our next portion. Okay? So, once you kind of peel back the curtain a little bit, it actually is quite simple in how it's built. Okay? All it requires is just a little bit of time and energy and focus put onto the music itself, but the structure that is there isn't anything too wild. Okie dokie. So now we are in the next section, measure 5. We have the same template. Campagnoli has given us the same template, except this time instead of an A major chord, we are building an E major chord, okay? And the main notes of an E major chord we find on those same beats. Measure 1 of measure 5, beat 3 of measure 5, beat 1 of measure 6, beat 3 of measure 6, beat 1 of measure 7, beat 3 of measure 7, beat 1 of measure 8, beat 3 of measure 8, and beat 1 of measure 9. All it is just an E major chord. Okay, same steps. Put on your drone, go through, find those notes, put it in a tempo, and the same steps go for the connecting bits as well. Take out the slurs. Then you can add slurs. And when you're ready, you can go as written. And so on. Once you have reached the high B of this E major section, then Campagnoli kind of gives us just a little fireworks playing an E major scale, okay? What I would recommend is to keep that E major drone, or if you're just listening to an E drone, that works just fine as well, but keep that drone going and find the intonation of each of these notes in 5th position. That E is what you're going to want to listen to. Make sure that it's ringing, make sure that it just has a lot of beauty to it, okay? What the word underneath the measure means, restes, is to remain. Just stay in 5th position for this section, dancing across your A and D string, making sure that your hand has enough height to it, that you're not reaching for any of these notes. Flat fingers are not going to be your friend here, but rather keeping your hand tunneled and comfortable for this 5th position scale, okay? You can go through the same steps. Maybe you slur groups of 2, maybe you slur groups of 3, maybe you do them all separate. Putting it in all sorts of different combinations will help your brain learn these notes. After we have finished this E major scale, then Campagnoli guides us through a few measures of patterns, okay? And I just want to point out what those patterns are. We have in measure 11 this repetition of patterns. Okay? We go down by 1 note, go up a few, and scale our way down. Go down by 1 note, go up a few, and scale our way down. Down by 1 note, up a few, scale down. Down by 1 note, up a few, and scale down. Thinking in this way, and where you are searching for the repetition that lives in the music, prevents this measure from becoming just a block of 4 beats of 16ths that stress you out. No, it really isn't. It has a kind of DNA to it that is quite simple. And then once you realize the kind of shape that our melody follows, it can help make your practice a little bit more enjoyable and much more clear, okay? The next measure also follows patterns. Okay, the first half of the measure is setting our shape of our melody. This kind of teeter-totter. And then the second half of the measure follows the same teeter-totter. The next measure is yet another pattern. of 3 notes that descend by 1 half step. Okay, now I'm playing kind of full speed, but what I'm trying to teach you guys is that when you start seeing patterns, or when you start looking for patterns in your music, and not just Campagnoli, but Campagnoli is a wonderful teacher of music that follows patterns, then you start seeing them in all sorts of different places, okay? And it makes the music a little bit more enjoyable to play because it all of a sudden isn't random. It has this really pleasant way of flowing from itself, okay? So, look for the patterns, and it will help make your practice of this piece, or any piece that you are working on, much, much more enjoyable. Starting at measure 13, we have a pattern of bowing that sustains itself for quite a few beats. And that pattern of bowing is slur for 2, separate for 2, slur for 2, slur for 2, separate for 2, slur for 2. And what you can do to practice this bowing is you can copy and paste it onto a scale. So let's just take a C major scale, for example, and we can play it with that bowing. That's one way you can practice the bowing. Another way is you can also teeter-totter between 2 open strings with that same bowing. So let's take our C and G string, for example. And so on. You just kind of can repeat it till it feels comfortable in your arm. And what this does is it gives your bow arm a chance to learn the bowing apart from the music itself. And I think this can be really, really helpful for patterns like that. Something else we can do starting at measure 13 is search for our melodies. And a way we can do this is taking certain parts of a beat and linking it up to parts of the next beat. So, for example, we can take the first note of measure 13, we can take the second to last 16th of beat 1, which is another C sharp, and then link it up to the first 16th of beat 2, a D sharp. We can take the D sharp, the second to last 16th of beat 2, and play the first 16th of beat 3, E. The second to last 16th of beat 3, and play the first 16th of beat 4. And if I get rid of all of my words and just play the melody, we discover that there is, in fact, a melody with all of this bowing rhythmic work happening as well. If we continue on, we have more. We have the last 16th of measure 13, the D sharp, leading us to the first 16th of beat 1 in measure 14. Second to last 16th of beat 1, first 16th of beat 2. Second to last 16th of beat 2, first 16th of beat 3. Second to last 16th of beat 3, and first 16th of beat 4. Same thing. If we put it all together, pick up into measure 14. And what this does is it just helps your ear feel a little bit more grounded as it's playing through all of these slurs and all of these different notes. If you have a melody that you feel should be sung throughout these measures, then it makes performing it a little bit easier. It isn't just a string of sixteenths. There is structure, there is a melody, and you can go through and find others. I'm sure there are plenty of other melodies that you can discover by taking different parts of each beat and linking them to different parts of the next beat. So I encourage you to do that in your practice because it's fun and it helps keep this caprice from becoming mechanical and instead keep it alive. In the second half of measure 15, we then begin lots of teeter-totter work, kind of as octaves or with lots of string crossings. And something technically to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that those string crossings are as minimal as possible. Make them as small as you can. And instead of thinking about motions with your bicep or big motions with your elbow, you want to instead isolate your string crossings by making them happen through your wrist and making them happen through your fingers. If you are blocking this and only moving your elbow or only moving your bicep and your shoulder, you're going to be creating a lot of extra work for yourself, okay? So try to find that happy medium between the two strings where you can just easily rock back and forth with your wrist. Nice and flexible. A way to practice the left hand is that you can play these as double stops, okay? So we can take our first octave Ds, play the E and the D, F sharp and D, same thing with the next measure, in measure 16. And then finally for the F sharps. Anytime we have fifths, so for example, beat 2 of measure 16 and beat 4 of measure 16, we want to make sure that we are flattening our first finger smack dab in between both strings, okay? If you place your fingertip in between both of those notes and experiment with itty bitty little differences of your wrist, of your fingertip moving, then you'll find a location where that finger can make both of those notes speak well. And it just takes time and practice, okay? But why we want to practice as double stops, I think, and why I think it's helpful, is because you then are practicing the shape of your left hand. You're practicing all of these notes, not as individual things, but as kind of framework, as a team between the two notes. So practicing as double stops, I think, can be really helpful in this portion. And then in measure 17, 18, and 19, Campagnoli writes this part of the caprice with a really repetitive harmonic pattern. So when we're talking about harmony, we're talking about the way notes combine with one another. And if you haven't taken any music theory, or you're not really familiar with words like harmony or melody, that's okay. All you need to know is that the way Campagnoli has written the harmonies is that the first half of the measure is more tense in the character. It's filled with a little bit more kind of anxiety or nervousness. And then the second half of the measure, all of that anxiety goes away in how he has written the harmonies, okay? So, measure 17, here's the first half of the measure. And then here's the second half of the measure. If I start to combine some of those notes, the tension of the first half becomes a little bit clearer. And then the relaxation of the second half. Same formula for measure 18. The first half of the measure. And then we get rid of it. Same thing for measure 19. And playing it in this way can help give your performance a more motivation in its character, right? We never want to play anything boring. We never want to play anything lazily. And so knowing that the first part of the measure has more tension, has more anxiety, and the second half of the measure has a little bit more relaxation from that anxiety, helps you play it in a certain way. So you might want to use a little bit more intensity. I'm going to exaggerate. First half of the measure, and then relax. More intensity, relax. More. Okay? Playing it in this way makes it much more interesting to listen to, and it also makes it more interesting for you to play as the performer, because you're now starting to tell stories, right? Between moments of intensity and moments of relaxation. At measure 20, we can start to do the same type of work that we did in measure 13 and 14, where we get to play melodic detectives and try to search for our melody here. One option for a melody that you might listen for is taking the first 16th of each beat. So at measure 20, our first 16th is F double sharp, which is going to sound the same as G natural. And then if we play the second to last 16th of beat 1 and link it with the first 16th of beat 2, same formula, second to last 16th of beat 2, first 16th of beat 3, second to last 16th beat 3, first 16th beat 4. We can get a little melody. And once your ears are aware of that, once you start to add all the other notes, it makes it a little bit more clear what your goal is. Rather than just making it a string of 16ths, we now are really starting to create a melody, right? We have the slurred material kind of starting to become our melody, and the separate notes as maybe more accompaniment or something that's just not quite as important. Melody, and then relax. Melody, and then accompaniment. Melody, accompaniment. Melody, accompaniment. Melody, accompaniment. And then so on, okay? Once you can really get some clarity in these strings of 16ths, because like I said at the beginning of the video, there is a lot of ink on the page. But what I hope that you are learning over the course of this video is that there are some really, really simple materials, simple building blocks that Campagnoli used to make this caprice. And if you can start to figure out what those building blocks are, then it makes your practice a little bit more clear, and over time it will definitely make your performance more clear, and it will make your time in that all-state audition a little bit, it won't completely take away the stress, but it'll make you feel a little bit less stressed for what you have to perform. In measure 22, just like we did in measure 16 and the second half of measure 15, I would recommend playing double stops. Now, there's all sorts of different fingerings that you can choose. I like to play this in half position. So first finger on D sharp, third finger on F sharp, and then this is where you can start to practice your double stops. Put the F sharp with the A, second finger on B natural, put it with the F sharp, C natural, put it with the F sharp, and then you can start to feel the shape of those measures, or that measure, in your left hand. You can also take the D sharp and play it with the open A, the B, so when you put it all together like that, your hand feels quite confident in the shape that it needs to be in to make those notes all pop with clarity. Okay? So slow double stop work. You play it more in tune than I will, and then slowly after you practice with focus, that double stop work I think will help your hand know exactly what it has to do. Finally, we are now in the kind of grand finale of the caprice, and we have a few beats where we are arpeggiating on a harmony. So a scale kind of goes note by note, and an arpeggio jumps around those notes a little bit more. Okay, so we are playing at measure 23. We have all these lovely little hops and skips around our strings, okay? So I would recommend just playing slowly, finding out the levels of your bow arm that make each of those notes sing with a lot of clarity, and then slowly speeding it up and making sure that the coordination between the string crossing in your right hand and the intonation of your left hand are working together, okay? And at the the second half of measure 24, we have these very, very large string crossings that begin to get larger and larger. Here's how I would practice this. We have to make sure that our lower note is set. Is the top note hard? No, it stays constant as a D. What is much more challenging is the lower note. So play your D, set the next note, and play. Play the D, set the next note, and play it. Set the D, set the next note. D, A, D, G, D, F natural, D, E. And even saying the next note out loud like I just did will help your brain get a little bit more memory going and a little bit more organization, so that you're not fishing for those notes when you're a little bit stressed. You know exactly what note is coming next after the high D, okay? Make sure also, technically, that your bow arm isn't getting lower and lower. Sometimes when we get stressed, things can start to collapse. Make sure instead that you are playing with a level of your bow arm that allows you to clear each of these string crossings. Not getting low and with a lot of risk, and that's not going to make your life easy. Get your bow arm up and over those strings play with clarity on those lower notes, okay? The last measure is this flourish. Where we have our E major arpeggio, which, if you remember from the very beginning of this video, and if you have made it all the way to the end, I congratulate you. You have an incredible amount of focus, because I know I said a lot of things in this video, but at the very beginning, we did work on E major. And that is how we finish the piece. Okay, and you can practice it the same way with a drone. Find where each of these notes live, find where each of these shifts kind of fit within the harmony, and then speed it up and go for a nice flow and flourish with this Caprice. I hope that this video has been at least a little bit helpful. There are so many different ways to learn a piece, and if you look online, there are many other videos with wonderful teachers to help you learn from this as well. I know that TMEA also has recently started to do these kind of teaching videos within the website as well, and those are readily available for you to learn from, and that is an incredible resource for your own learning process, okay? But I just hope that what you take away from the Allstate experience is that there is so much to be learned from a piece of music, right? We talked about patterns, we talked about harmonies, we talked about creative ways of practicing, we talked about character, and that is just scratching the surface, right? I could have created a 6-hour video if I really wanted to of all that there is to learn from just one Caprice, okay? And so I encourage you in your own practice to not think of it as dull or as boring, but instead the opposite. Think of all the incredible possibilities that you get to learn from just one Caprice or from just one etude, and let that kind of spirit and that sense of discovery guide your practice so that you are always staying productive and you're staying musical in your playing of the viola, okay? So, happy practicing. I will keep the comments open, so if any of you have questions, or if there are teachers watching this video that have any questions or comments for me as well, please do not hesitate, and I will do my best to answer and respond to them in due time, okay? Thank you guys so much.